accountability in the judiciary. Suspended Gauteng judge Tintswalo Makhubele has been found guilty of gross misconduct. That's after allegations that she occupied the role of chairperson of the interim board at PRASA while also being a judge at the division of the High Court. Now, earlier this year, Western Cape High Court Judge Mushtaq Parker was also found guilty of gross misconduct by a Judicial Conduct Tribunal. All this while Eastern Cape Judge President Selbin Benenge has also been accused of making unwanted sexual advances towards a junior staffer. So there's a lot going on in the judiciary now. Let's bring into the discussion our reporter, Zoleka Qodashe. Zoleka, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for coming in and welcome. It's good to see you. There certainly is a lot going on in the judiciary, right? And if we focus on this issue of Judge Makhubele, if indeed these impeachment processes get underway, she would be the third judge to be impeached in a democratic South Africa.
That's correct, Michelle. And you'll remember that this is a culmination of several years of investigations by the Judicial Conduct Tribunal that was investigating this allegation by the civic society organization, #UniteBehind, that claimed that she violated the separation of powers principle by occupying that dual membership or roles as chairperson of the interim board at PRASA, as well as a judge that was appointed effective from the 1st of January 2018. Now, you'll remember that she was part of the October leg of the interviews in 2017, after which the JSC then recommended her for appointment to the president. Now, that period of time is given to judges to also relinquish their positions in order to avoid any conflict of interest that may arise. And so, excuse me, she occupied those positions. Of course, she had alleged before the tribunal that, in fact, she was not a judge from the 1st of January 2018 because she had not taken an oath of office by that time. And so that is something that the tribunal also grappled with. But of course, the JSC, excuse me, finding that she is, in fact, guilty of gross misconduct.
Let me give you a chance to let me give you a chance to have some water, Zoleka. So I want to just unpack because the Judicial Conduct Tribunal found her guilty of this complaint that she accepted a job as a PRASA board member, but this was after she was informed of her imminent appointment as a judge by the Gauteng judge president, Dansim Lambo. So she argued on a technicality that she was not a judge when she accepted that position, which is obviously something they didn't buy.
Of course. So that is why the interviews were in October. She was then around November notified of her appointment to the judge effective from the 1st of January 2018. And so she had not occupied the role of judge at the time. But of course, she was then appointed as the interim chairperson of the state-owned entity several weeks or days after she was had already been notified of her appointment to the Gauteng bench, which is also one of the busiest bench in the country. And so that dual occupation of those roles is what led to the complaint by #UniteBehind. But part B of the complaint was also in relation to her conduct during her chairmanship or chairpersonship of the board at PRASA, and how she allegedly facilitated and sidelined the legal department at PRASA and facilitated a settlement deal of over 50 million rand during that period. And so that is why the JSC also found her guilty of gross misconduct on 2 of those complaints. Now, the JCT, the Judicial Conduct Tribunal, had found that she was not guilty of gross misconduct and only guilty of misconduct on part B of that complaint. The JSC saying that, in fact, she should be found guilty of gross misconduct on both of those complaints. And that is now why the JSC has now referred the matter to National Assembly Speaker for the commencement of impeachment proceedings. Yeah,
so the Judicial Conduct Tribunal decision is one thing, but the JSC decision is the important one, because for a judge to be impeached, it needs a gross misconduct guilty finding, and that's when it can go to Parliament.
So the process is quite a lengthy one, Michelle, excuse me, and begins with the JSC. A complaint is filed with the JSC, and then it then goes to the Judicial Conduct Committee that will then probe the allegation that has been made or the complaint that has been made against a judge. And if it finds that there's a prima facie case for which the judge has to answer, it then makes a recommendation to the JSC for the establishment of a tribunal. The tribunal will then be established, and it will sit and has the powers to investigate and call witnesses to testify in the complaint that has been made against a judge. After which, the tribunal then writes a report, sends it to the JSC on the finding that they have made. In this case, we had a guilty finding of gross misconduct, which then went to the JSC. The JSC then will choose to look at the report, decide whether to adopt it or not, and then make a finding of its own, after which we may see the commencement of impeachment proceedings. Now, that then triggers Section 177 of the Constitution. Now, there are three grounds upon which a judge can be impeached. One is if they are found to be guilty of gross misconduct, as we have seen in this case. Another is if they suffer from an incapacity. And another, the third, is whether they suffer from gross incapacity, and so, or grossly incompetent, rather. And so those are the three grounds that can trigger the impeachment process in the National Assembly. And that's what we're seeing unfold at the moment. Yeah. So with the finding of the JSC, it then goes to the National Assembly Speaker, who will then table a motion for a resolution of the National Assembly. And then it needs two-thirds majority. Two-thirds majority,
which is what we saw with Nkola Matata and with Dr. John Hlophe, correct. So all of this, of course, unfolds in the context of what we've been seeing on our screens for the past few months. And that is the sexual harassment inquiry into Eastern Cape Judge President Selbin Benenge. And that evidence has been incredibly, perhaps we should reserve judgment on what the evidence has been, but nonetheless, it's been interesting to see. The bottom line is, and I think that the Eastern Cape Judge President has admitted as much, that he was looking for a relationship with someone who was a junior in his office, perhaps not reporting directly to him, but he is the head of the judiciary in the province. And then we know the Western Cape High Court Judge Mushtaq Parker also found guilty of gross misconduct just earlier this year. There's already a lot of pressure on the judiciary, right? Just in terms of certain political parties, if rulings don't go in their favour, they make comments about the incompetence of the judiciary and the like. What does this do to a judiciary that's already, shall we say, under fire?
Well, when there are allegations of the kind of nature that we've seen take place and be thrust in the spotlight the way that we have, particularly in the matter and the tribunal investigating those sexual harassment allegations against the head of the Eastern Cape Division, it does, of course, have a dent on the integrity of the judiciary. But that is precisely the purpose of these tribunals and this mechanism to investigate these allegations against judges. And it is a way to ensure that the judiciary is held accountable. But one thing that has been of criticism to the JSC is the lengthy periods that these tribunals take and these investigations take. You'll remember that in the instance of suspended Judge Nana Makhubele, the complaint was filed in 2019. It's now in 2025 that the tribunal has concluded its work and the JSC has now made a finding of its own. But that's also to safeguard the integrity of the judiciary. When there are allegations of the nature that we've seen, they do tend to damage the public confidence that the public has in the judiciary, but it's precisely mechanisms such as this complaints mechanism that is intended to safeguard the integrity of the third arm of state.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a double-edged sword. Zoleka Qodashe, thanks for coming into studio, giving us a sense of a whole range of issues, but particularly as it relates to the suspended Gauteng High Court Judge Nana Makhubele.